Hi folks, I'm the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics. Today I'm going to have a little fun in the shop. I'm going to show you the process, and I'm going to take a couple of shortcuts because I'm still learning my trade as a videographer. But one of the things that I have enjoyed doing in the last several months is making my own rings. And I know you can barely see that. But these rings are made of deer antler. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can do that with a minimum of equipment, and we'll walk you through the process. One of the things that I'm going to do to show you, here's a piece of deer antler I've already cut. So cutting antler is hard and it's going to take some time. So we're going to take a couple of shortcuts with a couple of pieces of pine lumber because the process is the same, but it will show you what you need to accomplish this. Now, one of the things you're going to need is an electric drill. Whether it's cordless, as mine is irrelevant. A wooden dowel, and I got this off of one of those little sponge paintbrushes when I finished with the sponge, and I knew that it wasn't going to be reusable. Pulled the end off and kept the dowel. That's going to be handy. And then you're going to need some sandpaper. If you have the extra equipment for power sanding, that's going to be even better. But let's just look at our process as we go. And the other thing I'll have to tell you is, while I've made me a ring for my middle finger, the last time I sized it, needed a size 13. Most of these deer antlers that I have are just not that large, so I'm actually going to be making a ring for my pinky. But I'm going to show you the process, and then you can look at it. There's some other videos on there that will help you as well, because there's some decorative things you can do. But the basic process is something that almost anyone can do with a power drill, a dowel, and some sandpaper. So the other thing that I find very useful for me is my, I started to say router, it's not a router, my Dremel tool, my high-speed rotary tool. That is what I will expand the centerpiece of my material. So the first thing you're going to need to do, and we'll just walk over here and we'll cut one out of antler. You can do this with a hacksaw. I'll just tell you, it's not fun with a hacksaw. So the other pieces of equipment that I'm going to be using is a power bandsaw. A scrolling saw works pretty well. You can pick up both of these pretty inexpensively secondhand. And then I'm going to be using a little band sander. And you'll see how that works in just a minute. So let's move over here and we'll show you how this goes. Alright, as I told you, I'm going to end up using pine just for the speed at which we can work it when it goes to sanding. But simply choosing your material, you want the widest piece you can get. And you also need to be thinking about the width of the ring that you want. That's a pretty wide ring there. You have to be thinking ahead because you're going to be taking material off. But it's as simple as learning to cut a straight line. One of the hardest things to do, you'll see that this is narrower on one side than the other, but not by much. So the first thing to do is to cut as clearly as you can a straight line. Alright, we're back here, and this is where I'm going to take some shortcuts. I do have a drill press, and I simply took my drill press and cut a hole. I found my center point, and if you look at this piece of antler, you see there's a flaw in it. But I'm going to sand so much of the outside that the flaw actually will become kind of a mark of uniqueness for this thing. But you start by cutting your center hole. Now, once you've cut your center hole, this is where this little piece comes in really handy. I've taken a dowel and I've I drilled a hole in the middle and put just a simple screw and a simple washer. And that is, whether I'm doing this piece is pine, by the way. I want to be able to hold it on here. I put it into my drill and lock my drill down. Now, even if all I have is a piece of sandpaper, I can put this even in my hand with a piece of sandpaper, and I can sand it as we go. But since I do have a band sander, we're going to use that. Alright, this is going to get really loud really quickly, but with my band sander, I simply start my sander in one direction, which it's going to be going down, and I'm going to use my drill in the other direction, and watch what happens. You see in just the 30 seconds that we did that, how quickly I'm getting to an oval. It's not exactly completely round, but it's pretty close. The power equipment allows me to get it rounder than doing it by hand and turning it, because I'm just not that good eyeballing these things. The next step of the process that I would use would be my Dremel tool. And with my Dremel tool, this one is completely worn out, of this sanding pad. But I use these drum sanders. I start with the smallest size, which you can see there, and it takes a different mount. But I simply work inside of these things, and I just start, and I hold it by hand and just start working around and around and around and around. And what I typically do is, you've seen these circles that I've drawn on here. What I do is take a ring that fits me and draw my inside diameter. And I want to do as much of the outside diameter first. So you also want to draw a ring with the outside diameter, because I can only put it on this dowel while it's at this size. And if you see the blue tape on the dowel, what I did is I tapered the edge so that it would slide on, and I put a little tape in there so it would have something to grip to, and then the washer holds it in place. But when I sand this thing down on the outside diameter as close as possible, then I just hook up my Dremel and I work it and I work it, and I want this thing really paper thin. So it's as simple as that. Once you've done that, if you've got a finer grit sandpaper, just sand this thing. Take the edges off of it so they're rounded. It won't cut into your finger. Puts a really nice sheen on it. And before you know it, you're making something that is unique to you. My son gave me a really good compliment the other day. He's got a friend, and his friend had a birthday. And he said, "Dad, I want to buy one of your knives. I am a very non-professional knife maker. I don't do forging. I buy knife blanks, and then I can sand them, can grind them. What I got into was actually making handles. And I had a couple of handles here. I've got one here I can show you. This one actually wasn't available that day, but here's one that I made. Nice leaf design, but I made the handles, and they are some kind of Western. It's an antler, kind of like a moose that's flat, but it was a deer that was smaller than a moose, but I couldn't tell you which kind. But it was from out west. And just worked it down, and it made a beautiful little knife. The one that I sold him, or actually I gave it to him, and he said, "No, I'm going to pay you." But the interesting thing was, he said, "Dad, my friend has a good job. He makes really good money, and he can buy anything he wants." He said, "The one thing he can't buy is a custom-made knife made by my dad." And I thought, man, that was a really nice thing. Rings make really nice gifts. They're novelty items. Beyond the value of the ring, I enjoy learning to use my equipment better. So if this video gives you any inspiration, you can do some wonderful things with your basic equipment in your shop, and it's things that will hold up for a while. I don't mind telling you, practice on wood, but especially if you're using pine like this is. This is off of one of those pickets like goes around your porch. When it gets very narrow, very thin I should say, it's going to break. So it's fine for learning your technique, but you're not going to have anything to show for it. I had wondered at times if maybe soaking some of this in like a wood glue to, it's not exactly stabilizing it, but it will give it a hardness that you don't get from pine otherwise. But little tricks like that make it inexpensive to practice, but you are able to really hone your technique. And I think it makes a wonderful little opportunity to do something for the kids, the grandkids, for your sweetheart, or even for yourself. I've got several very, very narrow antler rings that I made for my smallest fingers. And when I say small, I mean I narrowed them down this way so that they were very thin. I was simply experimenting with the strength of antler, and I'm here to tell you I've not broken one yet. So that is that's our video for today, and I hope that it will give you an idea of maybe doing some things for yourself, because it is so, I call it therapeutic. It's therapeutic when you look at something and say, I did that. You might look at it and go, next time I'll do it different. And you will. You'll do it better. But today, you've learned enough to pick up some pretty basic tools and to make your own rings. I'm the Bald Guy. If you like these videos, let me invite you to share them. Certainly subscribe, and that way you'll see the next time a video comes out. Been traveling some. We had some medical procedures to go through in the family recent weeks, so I've not been online as much as I should, but hopefully we'll be back up to speed in the days to come. If you have ideas that you'd like to see, give us a shout. I am the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics.